October 1985, Hamburg. The session was scheduled for 10 a.m. The booking had been made the previous week. Standard procedure. Modern Talking Studio B, 10 a.m. full day. The engineer had confirmed, the manager had confirmed, both artists had confirmed, everything arranged, everything in place, the studio would be ready. The material was prepared, Dieter Bohlen had the new compositions, 3 songs, the next album taking shape. The session would record the vocal foundations, Thomas's performances on the new tracks. The arrangements had been sent, Thomas had reviewed them, had done his preparation, knew the melodies, had internalized the phrasing, was ready. The night before, Thomas did what he always did before sessions: vocal rest, light dinner, early sleep, the discipline of a professional performer. Protecting the instrument, he arrived the next morning at 9:57 a.m. 3 minutes early, always early or on time, professional habit, professional respect, professional standard that he held himself to without being asked. The studio building familiar, the entrance familiar, the corridor familiar, Studio B familiar. He had been here dozens of times. The smell of the place specific and known, equipment, acoustics. The particular quality of a space built for sound. He pushed open the door. Klaus Schmidt, the engineer, was already there. 9:45 a.m. Klaus always arrived before everyone, set up, prepared, had levels calibrated before the first person arrived. Professional standard matching Thomas's own. Morning Thomas, morning Klaus. They both looked at the clock. 9:57 a.m., both with the same. Implicit thought: session in 3 minutes. Dieter would arrive. They would begin. Klaus returned to his board. Minor adjustments. Thomas set down his bag, removed his jacket, reviewed the lyric sheets he'd brought. One more pass through the melodies. Preparation continuing until the moment it wasn't needed. 10:00 a.m. The clock exact. No Dieter. Thomas looked at the door, looked at the clock. Standard, normal. People were sometimes a few minutes late. Traffic. Parking, nothing significant. 10:03 a.m. No Dieter. 10:05 a.m. No Dieter. Klaus at his board, calibrating something. Both men aware of the time without looking at it too directly. The awareness of waiting beginning. Quiet. Thomas sat on the couch in the corner of the control room. Standard waiting position. The couch where artists waited. Between takes, between setups, between the active moments of a session, he sat, the lyrics in his hands, not reading them anymore, just sitting, waiting for the session to begin. 10:10 a.m. The manager called. Klaus took it. Dieter's running late. Traffic situation. He'll be there as soon as possible. Translation: not imminent, not 5 minutes. Running late, as soon as possible. The professional language of delay without specific timeline. Klaus relayed it to Thomas. Traffic. He'll be here when he can. Thomas nodded. Okay. That was it. That was the entire response. No frustration expressed, no comment, no how late, or did he say when, just okay. Klaus returned to his board. Thomas returned to the couch. The session scheduled for 10 a.m. now beginning its waiting phase. Duration unknown, 10:20 a.m. No Dieter. Thomas was not reviewing lyrics anymore, not reviewing anything, just sitting, looking at the general middle distance. The particular unfocused gaze of someone in genuine waiting, not impatient waiting, not frustrated waiting, just waiting, patient, professional, present, the studio quiet around him, the equipment ready, the microphones positioned, the mixing board set. Everything prepared for a session that hadn't started. Klaus occasionally made an adjustment, the professional activity of maintaining readiness, between adjustments, also quiet, also waiting, the two of them in the studio, one responsible, one waiting for the one who was responsible. The power structure of the session visible in the waiting. Klaus could begin technical work without Dieter, could adjust and calibrate and maintain, but the session itself, the recording, the production, the music, could not begin without Dieter, without the compositions, without the direction, without the vision that required Thomas's voice to be realized. Thomas could not begin without Dieter, could not record without the producer present, could not perform without the structure that gave the performance context. He was waiting for the person whose presence was required before his own presence could be used. That was the structure, simple, clear, never before experienced quite this directly, because sessions always began on time, or close enough to on time that the waiting was brief, minimal, unmemorable. Today the waiting extended, made itself felt, made the structure visible through duration. 10:35 a.m. The manager called. Again, Klaus took it, still on his way. Sorry for the delay, shouldn't be too much longer. Shouldn't be too much longer, the language of continued indefiniteness. Thomas heard it. Okay, same word, same tone, same absence of expressed frustration. Klaus hung up, returned to his board. Thomas looked at the clock, 10:35. Session was supposed to have started 35 minutes ago. One song could have been recorded in that time, one complete vocal track. Maybe two depending on takes, time not being used, time accumulated in the account of delay. Thomas thought about this, not with resentment, with simple observation. 35 minutes, gone, professional time, prepared time, ready time, waiting for the person who held what was needed to use it. 11:00 a.m., 1 hour. Thomas got up from the couch, walked to the small kitchen adjacent to the studio, made himself a tea. The ritual of activity and waiting, returned, sat. The tea was something to hold, something warm, something his hands could do while the rest of him continued to wait. Klaus, you want to do some vocal warm-ups, run through the melodies while we wait. Professional suggestion, reasonable, using the time constructively. Thomas, no, I'll wait, not explained, not elaborated, just I'll wait. He had done his preparation the night before, his voice was ready. Running through warm-ups now would be using preparation already made, would be applying readiness before readiness was required. He would wait, full, prepared, ready, until the session could begin. Klaus understood, didn't push, the musician's prerogative, the performer's own. Assessment of their own instrument, Thomas's assessment, wait. Klaus continued his quiet work. Thomas continued his quiet waiting, the tea cooling in his hands, the clock advancing. 11:15 a.m. The manager did not call again, perhaps knowing further calls would do nothing, perhaps having no new information to offer, just delay continuing. Session not started, both men in the studio, one doing what he could, one waiting to do what he could when conditions allowed. Thomas thought about the morning, about his preparation the night before, about arriving 3 minutes early, about being ready, about the professional standard he applied to his own participation in their shared work, the same standard he applied to every session, every show, every professional obligation. He arrived prepared, he arrived on time, he protected the instrument, he delivered what was required. He had done all of that this morning, and was sitting on a couch in Studio B drinking cooling tea while the person whose presence was required to use Thomas's preparation was somewhere in Hamburg in a traffic situation. The observation was clear, clean, unadorned. Thomas's preparation present, Thomas's readiness present, Thomas's professional standard met. The session not started, not because of Thomas. Not because of anything Thomas did or didn't do, because the session required Dieter. Because without Dieter's compositions and productions and direction, Thomas's preparation had nowhere to go, nowhere to be used, nowhere to realize itself. He sat with that, not with resentment, with recognition, the structure of their partnership visible through absence, through delay, through the 3-hour demonstration of what Thomas could and couldn't do without Dieter present. What he could do, wait, what he couldn't do, begin. 11:30 a.m. Thomas rose again, walked the length of the studio slowly, not pacing, not anxious movement, just the natural need to move after sitting still. He looked at the microphone stand in the main room. The microphone positioned exactly where Klaus had placed it, optimally, professionally, ready for a voice. Ready for his voice, standing there in the prepared silence of the studio, waiting the way he was waiting. The microphone couldn't begin either, without Dieter, without the arrangements, without the sessions taking shape. They were both waiting in their own way, Thomas and the microphone, both ready, both requiring the same absent thing before they could be what they were built to be. Thomas almost smiled at that. Almost. He returned to the couch, sat, continued. Noon, 2 hours. Thomas had stopped checking the clock consciously. The time was passing. He knew it was passing, didn't need the specific numbers, just time, long, empty, full of the knowledge of what it contained. Klaus had quietly made lunch, a simple thing, whatever was in the studio kitchen, had set a plate near Thomas. Thomas had eaten. Had thanked Klaus, the domesticity of shared waiting, two professionals maintaining themselves through a delay neither controlled. Neither complained, neither expressed frustration to the other, both maintaining the professional container, both understanding what was happening was what was happening. Comments would change nothing, expressions of frustration would serve nothing. The session would begin when it could begin. Until then, wait. Thomas thought about the other sessions. The hundreds of times he'd walked into a studio and Dieter had been there, or arrived within minutes of Thomas, the way the sessions always felt ready to begin, or beginning immediately, the energy of production present from the start. Today that energy absent, the studio present, the equipment present, Thomas present, the energy of production missing. Because it lived in Dieter, in his presence, in his vision for what the session would produce, Thomas could bring his preparation, his voice, his professional commitment, but the production energy, the thing that told the session what it was and where it was going, that lived in Dieter, and Dieter was in traffic, had been in traffic. For 2 hours was still in traffic, or no longer in traffic. Thomas didn't know. Nobody had called again. Nobody had updated the timeline. Just waiting. 12:30 p.m. Klaus's phone rang. Brief conversation. He hung up. He's parking. 5 minutes. Thomas looked up, nodded, stood, set the empty teacup down, stretched. 2.5 hours of sitting. The body noting the duration it had been held in stillness. Thomas ran a brief scale, quietly. Checking, the voice still there, the preparation still intact. The instrument maintained through the waiting, ready, as if no time had passed, as if 10 a.m. had just arrived and the session was beginning on schedule. This was the professional discipline. The preparation preserved through the delay, not wasted, just held, waiting. 1:00 p.m. Video door opened. Dieter Bohlen, professional composure intact. Quick glance around the room. Equipment status, session readiness, his natural assessment of a studio environment, brief acknowledgement, traffic was impossible, sorry for the delay, to the room, to both of them, professional, efficient, already moving past the delay toward the work. Klaus, we're set up, ready when you are. Dieter went to his position, mixing board, his territory, his domain. He checked the board, reviewed the session notes, the preparations Klaus had made, familiarizing himself with the current state, getting ready to produce. Thomas, hello, his word, his contribution to the transition between waiting and working, flat, professional, no inflection that indicated 3 hours, no tone suggesting the weight of what had accumulated. No, where were you, or 3 hours, or I've been here since 10. Just hello, Dieter, hello, let's start with the first song. We can still get 3 tracks done if we're efficient, already in work mode, already in production mode. Already organizing the session around what was possible in the remaining hours, not acknowledging the lost hours, not reflecting on the waiting, just forward, the work, what could be done. Thomas moved to the vocal booth, headphones, familiar weight, position, familiar posture. Klaus adjusted the monitor mix, standard, routine. Dieter pulled up the arrangement for the first song, the instrumental track he'd already recorded. Thomas's vocal cue prepared, ready, from the talkback, ready. The session began as if 10 a.m. had been 30 seconds ago, as if the 3 hours had been a breath held and now released. The work proceeding with the efficiency and focus of professionals who knew exactly what they were doing. First take, technically clean. Second take, better. Third take, something arrived in the performance, something genuine. That's it, Dieter said. Good take. Moving to the second song. The session ran until 6 p.m. 3 songs recorded, what had been planned. The delay compressed into the afternoon, the lost morning recovered through efficient afternoon work, both professionals, both capable, both delivering exactly what the session required. The session excellent, the work exactly right, as if the 3 hours had never happened, as if the clock had started at 1 p.m. and run its proper course, but the 3 hours had happened. Thomas carried them, not as grievance, as knowledge, something understood in Studio B that morning that he hadn't understood in quite that way before. He had arrived, he had prepared, he had been ready, and none of that had been sufficient to begin, because beginning required Dieter, his presence, his direction, his production, the compositions that only he carried, the vision that only he held. Thomas's excellence was real, his preparation was genuine. His professional standard was met, and still 3 hours of waiting, because the session was Dieter's, the music was Dieter's, the direction was Dieter's. Thomas's role, arrive, prepare, wait, perform when called, perform excellently, perform professionally, perform with complete commitment, but arrive and prepare and wait, in that order. Always the waiting was part of the structure was part of the partnership was part of who he was professionally, all of it visible that morning in Studio B, through 3 hours of tea and quiet and the clock moving forward while the session held still. He left at 6:15 p.m. Good session, Dieter said. Thanks, Thomas replied. He went to his car, drove home, thought about the morning for a long time, not with bitterness. With the specific clarity that comes from understanding something you already knew but had never quite seen this directly, this clearly, this undeniably. He was excellent at what he did. He was essential to modern talking. He was the voice that made the compositions human, that made the music feel real, that made millions of people respond. He was genuinely, completely, professionally essential, and he couldn't begin without Dieter. Both things true, both permanent, both part of the same partnership. The excellence in the dependency, the essential role in the waiting, side by side, inseparable, the structure of modern talking, visible in one October morning, in 3 hours of tea, in hello, in let's start with the first song, in the session that was excellent despite everything, or perhaps because of it. The excellence in the waiting together making the whole of what they were. Thomas drove home, said nothing to anyone about the morning, never mentioned it to Dieter, never raised it with the manager, just knew it, privately, completely, and continued, professional to the core, prepared always, ready when called, present from the first note to the last. That was Thomas Anders. That was what October 1985 confirmed. For him, about all of it.